Good afternoon, good evening. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock on Monday afternoon, Monday evening, I guess is a better way to put it. And this is Dr. Bernardo returning from the land of the lost to continue to work you through this course as we move on down the road. It's very possible I'll be doing this in two pieces, one piece tonight and another piece tomorrow. It's not as though this, I think I'm going to pause it right now and go get something that I need. Forgive me. Sorry about that. There's just too many balls up in the air sometimes, and I forget to do some things I should have done. But I'm back again and ready to go. And so what I will do is what I've been doing, which is to say I'll be posting this agenda probably tomorrow, again, because I may be doing two videos rather than one, depending how long this one goes. And sometimes it takes a little time to work out all the bubbles. A student emailed me today about not being able to find week 3. I would have sworn on every Bible in all of the Western world that I had put it up there. But as I looked again, Pamela, just so you know, it wasn't your fault. I hadn't pressed a little green button in 2 places. I only had pressed it in 1, and that's why it wasn't up. So I appreciate you letting me know. I would have caught up to that sooner or later, but better sooner than later. Anyway, don't get old. So as I said before, we have these agendas, which I have to now find that one so I won't get confused about which class I'm in. And I'll be sharing some important information, some very important information, actually. I'm glad I remembered that was part of what we needed to do. Bear with me. I'm just trying to get my engine running. So I'm going to share the screen and tell you a little story. Here we go. I was contacted by Dr. Kodak probably middle of last week in terms of the project leader aspect of this course. And I think I mentioned in last week's video that I had taught in the very first course back, I think it was either 10 or maybe 11 years ago in that program. I have great respect for that program, enormous respect for the program. St. John's is very fortunate to have that partnership with the government to be funded to do a piece of this. And the fact that you're benefiting from it by getting a double certification is nice, but what's even nicer in my view is the fact that you're going to have muscles in 2 places. One being your concentration on working on programs specific to ENL children, and the other piece is that you'll have those skills necessary to put them in place and to make them happen, and to be assured that they're going to be part of what this is all about. At any rate, I do feel strongly about that, and I do respect Dr. Kodak and Dr. Spiridakis and Dr. Cho's investment in having this all happen. And I'm pleased to be able to contribute where I can. One place I was asked to contribute by Dr. Kodak, again, along about the middle of next week, is an adjustment in this course. Now, nobody got in a rash. It's not all that big a deal. And I can't claim that I've got everything all figured out yet, but you will see in a moment that I should bring that up too. All right, I'm talking to myself again. You'll see in a moment an opportunity for you. Here we go. Instead of one of the assignments in the course, and I haven't figured out which one. I really don't like to give up assignments. But in lieu of one of the assignments in the course, in other words, I'm going to take a course assignment out that you don't have to do, and I'll be looking forward to your point of view about that. In fact, let's make it a democracy. Tell me which assignment you think perhaps might not necessarily be part of your own interest level or your skills needs, and maybe that's the one I'll be taking out. But in lieu of that, and again in your favor, because you have all these hours that you have to fulfill within this course, in addition to all the other courses that you take for your internship hours, there are a few things more important to you. and I can't emphasize this enough. I know Dr. Kodak has said this to you. More important than your ability to not only take part in the numbers of experiences that have to do with this program, this Project Leader program, but also to take it to the streets, which is to say, make it real. And I can teach theory with both of my arms tied behind my back all day long, and pretty well. And I can show you where they fit in on the streets too, probably as well as just about anybody I can think of. If I said smugly, at any rate, the internship in general has great, enormous import to you. It's not just a matter of clocking hours and say you did this and you did that and you did this and you did that. And instead to be able to say it's got substance, it's got some meaning, and it's an experience that you, at the very least, he shouted, put it into your resume when you go to seek jobs. So this assignment that I'm about to share with you is going to be part of your internship activity, something you can clock if you choose to do this. It's really optional. If you don't want to do it or you can't do it, then that's fine too. Then you'll stay with the assignment that I was going to take out. But I'd rather not do that because, quite frankly, my bookkeeping skills, you may have noticed, I'm not the greatest. And I don't think this particular assignment, on the face of things, is all that difficult. So let me read to you what I wrote here. It's in the agenda that you're going to see tomorrow, Tuesday. And here it is. And the grammar is not great, by the way, but I cleared it with Dr. Kodak before I put it on my agenda. And that is, in lieu of an assignment, I will waive for internship activities amounting up to 3 hours, which you'll log the actions for big grammar there. Log the actions you look to arrange. I'll have to change that real quick. Log the actions you took to arrange by working with your building administrator or chair to publicize the following event that's described in the attached flyer. You can consider this task as part of the Parent Engagement PSEL standard. It's in a module already. I put it in the module. I'm pretty sure I made it visible, Pamela. And you'll see basically there's a big panel discussion going on in Wading River. Now, I don't know how many of you live on Long Island. I don't think very many of you do, if any. I live on Long Island, and Wading River is a good 40 minutes from me, and I'm fairly far out from Queens. I can tell you that. I live on the South Shore. You'd have to go to the North Shore to physically attend this particular conference. Apparently, Dr. Spiridokas has money to pay for transportation, has money to pay for your participation if you wanted to sit in on it. But in any event, it's going on up in Wading River, and up in Wading River means up on the North Shore, in a very, very beautiful part of Long Island. Actually, if you haven't been out here, but it is a trek. There's no question about it. So I'm not saying I'm not requiring anyone to go to it unless you're participating in one of the 2 panel discussions that the project leader groups from St. John's apparently are taking part in. But you need to try to figure out a way to organize it for the people in your school if they were interested. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to publicize the events through the cooperation of your principal or chair to get the word out to parents who might be interested in participating in this. And we'll figure out a way to get them there. But your job is just to get the organization, to get the publicity out, to take care of it. So what I'm going to do for a moment is stop this share and bring up another share. Now you have this on this, you don't have it physically on this agenda. You have it in a module. So it's not like this will be the only time you'll be able to access this. And here it is. It's a conference on Thursday, on March 16th, sponsored by NYU, about research about equity and the transformation of schools. And it's sponsored by the New York State Association for Bilingual Education. And you can see the events, a nice set of events. I don't see the address for us down here. Okay. You can see that there's going to be an opening session from a keynote speaker. There'll be exhibits of different materials that may be of worth to you as a teacher or you as an administrator down the line. There is I got too many computers on at the same time here. Forgive me. There is there are concurrent sessions. One is parents' rights, which I think is probably something parents would want to see. There's a luncheon for that recognizes the Bilingual Parent of the Year award. There's some student performances. There's another exhibitor hall. There's another session about the roadmap to college. Same time, there'll be one about family wellness, and there'll be a closing session to end about 3 o'clock. So it runs from 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 p.m. And it's got some good things in there. I also see some other things down here that continues, actually. That's even a little bit more refined, apparently. Now, we're just talking about one of the conference days, specifically the 16th. And what you want to do is try to get people to go. So what you need to do is publicize it, advocate for it. And that's basically it. If you have any more questions about it, I would ask you to contact me, and then I'll contact Dr. Kodak. It'll be a little clumsy that way, but I don't want to overwhelm him with questions. And then we'll take it from there. So you have this PDF, and the advantage for you is you can not do an assignment I will waive. I think I'll decide what that is. I'm not going to give you the option to do that unless you have a strong opinion about something. And then you can clock internship hours. I'm going to give you up to 3 hours to do this, to get the word out to parents and advocate for people to go. And I really think we'll probably need some more information about some things. And when you tell me what you need to know, I will find out what you need to know, and I will get back to all of you in the same way. So that's the first thing I wanted you to know about today. It's important I'll probably bring it up again next week, just to continue the conversation. Instead of an assignment, do an activity that will clock on your internship chart. Instead of doing an assignment, connect it to parent engagement in the project leader advocacy as such. Okay, enough said. So let's go on to the next place. And let's share the screen again. And the YouTube link is not up on this yet, but it will be once I finish doing this. We've done the housekeeping piece here. I just did that. I reviewed the assignments that were necessary. Look on the syllabus. I'm probably going to start taking things out of that syllabus. I think the syllabus is a little bit too structured for my taste. And I kind of want to go where I think some things have to go. And to go with some things that you seem to be suggesting from some of the conversations I've been having with some of you. But for the moment, stay with the syllabus. Look at the syllabus. The last chart in the syllabus is pretty clear about what the topics are for a given week, like I'm trying to continue to follow. And the assignments are also clear in another chart. Essentially, you're doing journal questions, and some weeks you're doing both journal questions and discussion questions. Some weeks you're doing just discussion questions. Some weeks you're doing just journal questions. Sometimes both, depending on how the week squeezes itself together. There's also 2 case studies. And the biggest thing, as I started to address last week, is the participation in the activity to action plan the multi-age classroom book. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to squeeze that a little bit harder today. And we're going to begin to every week address it different ways, so I can begin to build you up toward that, because that assignment has a value in a couple of ways. It has a value in terms of planning and change, certainly, but piggybacking off the planning and change title of this course, it also has great value. Again, and I don't like to talk this way. I rarely do, but sometimes I do, and this is one of those times, is for you to recognize that there is two certification exams in your case. One is for the E&L if you don't already have that certification, and the other one is for you're building a leader license, and you're building a leader license exam. It's a state exam, not an easy exam. You just don't walk into it and smile and pass the exam. It's a rigorous exam, as it should be, to assure the state of education department, state education department, and St. John's that you have mastered those PSEL standards, so that you're equipped to go out and be the leader we need you to be to work with the children who need the attention that all of this is targeted towards. That Dr. Kozer assignment, I'm going to squeeze a bit, all right? And I'm going to start doing that maybe even today, just to get you some muscle started on how to approach that from a practical point of view to get the skills that you need to bring this all together. It's going to be fairly complex, and I need you to stay with me on this, because as I started to say before, believe it or not, the state exam will have a question about how you're going to use data to implement the change. And it's just not a matter of snapping one's fingers and doing that, as I'm sure you already understand. And since we're going to do that, since you are all project leader E&L people, we're going to manually focus that towards that need as such. All right, so other things, one of the things I want you to do along those lines, the discussion question for this week, and for not all of the weeks, but for this week anyway, is to discuss any aspect of Dr. Kozer's book that intrigues you or would like to know, or you'd like to know more about. Sometimes I call that a PMI. I haven't used that technique with you yet. I'll just plant the seed. PMI stands for plus, minus, interesting. So PMI, some aspect of Dr. Kozer's book. What's a plus about it? Why is it important? Why do you think you need to know more about it? Whatever it is you think is a positive thing. And what's a minus? What is something that either bothers you about the book or bothers you about the issue that's been raised, something that gives you concern? And the one that interests me personally the most is the I. And that would be, what interests you? What would you like to know more about? Dr. Kozer's book is pretty comprehensive, I think. It goes well beyond multi-aids classrooms, I think. But it's not the be-all and end-all. There's plenty of things in this book that are in my book that I didn't require of you to buy, that would probably compensate some things that's missing here, or could be stressed that much more. There's no one book that's going to fit every need that you have. So you can take it from a PMI, approach, or you can just take it from, just discuss something that you think intrigues you, which is more, I guess that would be another way to look at the letter I. Read the journal question that's connected to the two books, other chapters that you're reading, the Fulham book and the Tomlinson book. And the question is, how do schools in the U.S. connect to teaching in the following ways? In terms of encouraging teacher careers, commitment to keeping teachers. It's a big issue, by the way, nowadays. To the culture. Now, by culture, I do not mean ethnicities. I'm not talking about that kind of culture. I'm talking about the culture of the organization. What's important to that culture, why they do what they do, why they don't do what they don't do, and you go from there. And context has to do with the backdrop, the background, the world out there that everyone has to contend with. I may have said this to you before. I probably did, but I'm aware of a school district or a school in the South Bronx, not too far from Yankee Stadium. Had a person from that building. I think she was an AP, going for her doctorate at the time, who shared with me that when a candidate applies to teach in that school, they're required to go stay for, I think it was a week, in a family in that community. And the people who refuse to do it don't get a job, don't get another chance at the job. The people who agree to do it, those who go through the week or whatever the time frame is, and come back and say, this is great, I want to be part of this, know what that community is about. And there are other people saying, I don't think I fit well here, and drop out. What a great expectation. I've never heard it before. I think it's great because those people have soaked up the world out there, the community. And when you can understand the community, more nearly you can leverage that knowledge of the community to make it work within the school as such. Again, to what extent do you create do you think that it talks about collaboration? Dr. B's opinion. People talk about collaboration, but people don't really know how to collaborate well in schools. I think I probably said that about 10 times already. And connected to that, to what extent do they integrate innovation, inquiry, that is to say, really reflect on what the data might be telling them, and while willing to experiment. It's a dangerous word in schools. And connect practice to research. Have you seen that? Are you aware of that? Or do you have an opinion about it? And I don't expect you to go into a big, long conversation about it because you may not have the experiences yet, but you should have some ideas about what you think is important or not. So that's what we're going to be doing at this point as far as the general question and the discussion question. We're going to begin to skim Dr. Koz's book a little bit more carefully in a moment. And then we have some content goals. You can see they're not extensive today. That's on purpose. In fact, I will come back to that tomorrow rather than even clutter this video up with that. So what we'll do here is we'll speak to Dr. Koz's book. I'm expecting by now you have the book. I'm expecting by now that you have begun to read it. I'm expecting by now you've at least have read the preface and the first couple of chapters. So I'm looking at chapter 1. And I'm just going to pull some things from it. I'm not going to try to speak to every piece of it. Sometimes I'm going to point out authors who I think have importance. I'll stop here, and then tomorrow I'll pick up another video that will talk more specifically about how you use root cause analyses to address Dr. Koz's assignment, among other places for that matter. Now, multi-age community is a cute word. I think I talked about this last week about the one-room schoolhouse approach, Little House on the Prairie approach. I was happened to be watching today by accident, actually. But the multi-age community is what it sounds like. It gets rid of the rigidly education systems. Now, a jillion years ago, when I first began teaching, I'm not going to tell you when, but it was long before any of you were born. There was one school district in our community, my district, that had I wouldn't call it no grades, but I would call it what's the word they used? I guess they used multi-age grades, but that wasn't a term they altogether used. So your child could be 6 years old and it could be in first grade, in quotes, or in second grade or in third grade, because some of those kids were all kind of melted together. And the teachers, it was team teaching. The teachers were charged with trying to melt those students together so they could help each other and so they could do some innovative things cross age. It was a marvelous way to look at it. The principal was very invested in it. It was his idea, well before his time in many respects. It didn't work out. A couple of reasons for it. One was the community never understood what it was about, and he didn't do a good job of selling that. Another thing was that his teachers didn't drink the Kool-Aid, which is, I hate that phrase, didn't buy into it either. So they were just happy to have a job, and so they said, "Yeah, we'll do this." But a lot of the teachers were not invested in learning how to individualize, use student contracts for individualized learning. It was well ahead of its time, and it became a bit chaotic, to be quite frank. One thing I noticed, now I was a 7th and 8th grade teacher at the time, when those kids came through that school. In those days, it was K6. When they came through that school, they would come up to the 7th grade with up into the junior high, which was what it was called then, and you immediately knew who those kids were. They were not your standard cookie cutter child. I'm talking about from the very bright child to a child with great academic needs child. They were different. They weren't used to sitting in rows. They weren't used to being asked to raise their hand. They weren't used to lockstep cookie cutter approaches to learning. They were used to thinking very independently, often very creatively, and had no compunction against speaking their mind, respectfully. And most of the teachers in the seventh grade had a tough time with that. They weren't used to that. I did too for a bit, but I kind of enjoyed it after a while. But they were a product of a school system that, or a system of schooling and of education that, in a rough sense, Dr. Kozer was endorsing wholeheartedly and understandably in the 21st century, because it certainly didn't work in the 20th because of the lack of communication and the lack of professional development to really build it up. So that's where this begins to come from. It talks about the schools of choice, where people integrate. Now, integrate's an important word to Bernardo. This course is not about curriculum specifically, but curriculum is my muscle, and I have to talk about it for a minute. I don't know if you're elementary or if you're secondary. If you're secondary, you'll understand me almost immediately. If you're elementary, you'll see it with a different lens. But essentially, what we're saying is integration is a word that people talk about, but often don't know what they're talking about. All right, so I'll give you a quick example, and you'll have to extrapolate from that on your own. Integration is what it sounds like, or if you want to use the word interdisciplinary, which is another word that gives me some hives. If you want to use that interdisciplinary word or cross-disciplinary, they all have different connotations to people. But here's a quick example. So if I'm teaching the Iroquois to 12-year-olds as a history teacher, social studies teacher, I look at my English teacher and I say, could you work on the Iroquois creation myth? And she says, great, I'll be happy to do that because I need to study mythology anyway, so this is a great one to work with. By the way, the Iroquois creation myth is really interesting. Most cultures' creation myths are really fascinating and scary, and in certain senses have interesting similarity. You can go from the Mayans in Central America to the Egyptians to the Chinese, and you'll see many similarities in their creation myths as such. At any rate, so the English teacher is going to do the creation myths. So I go to the math teacher and I say, I don't know what you can do. And the math teacher says, well, I can do Indian math, Iroquois math. The Iroquois had measurement systems. The Iroquois measured things. The Iroquois had a sense of math. They didn't call it that. They had enough math in their culture to do what it took to do the things they needed to be able to do. It wasn't the same measurement systems we Europeans used, but it was certainly enough for their culture. So he would do a couple of lessons about that. The science teacher and I would go crazy. We do all kinds of things about Iroquois' attention to the ecology, to its sense of universe and so forth. All good, and beautifully. The kids were very invested in it. Problem was that timing didn't work well. I mean, as a social studies teacher, and I rightly had to invest more time into the material than the other three teachers had to, or the art teacher too was also part of it, as well as the music teacher. But no, everyone also needed to serve some other things in terms of their own responsibilities, and it was a tough thing to keep together, let alone to bring together, because that kind of interdisciplinary is about content integration, which is something that people talk to, but are not able to do very well because everyone wants to serve their own turf, TURF. True interdisciplinary work is not about content. It's not about reading The Tale of Two Cities when someone else is teaching the French Revolution. Not about that. It's about process skills. It's about thinking skills. It's about problem solving. It's about decision making. It's about inquiry. It's about creativity. Those skills cut across all subjects. They're the informal object of a course, of a subject, rather than the formal. and it's hard to do. If I wanted to do a unit on decision making, I can probably pull things. I did pull things in from presidential decisions and so forth. But the science teacher had to think of another way to teach decision making. First is to have the math teacher did it, because that was deeper and that was true interdisciplinary integrated learning. So when you read about integrated instructional models and personalized approaches, you have to kind of look at it with eyes squinty and say, what do you mean? And understand that, although it's got great value. And if you pay attention to page 20 of Dr. Koz's book about this, you can get a nice feel for it, because really she's advocating for something that doesn't exist consistently around the country. And then she goes and speaks about some of the research. Some of the people she mentioned are important. And two people I'm going to mention. One would be Goodlad. Another would be Dufour, Ricky Dufour, Dufour. And another one whose first name I can't remember. I think it was John. Marzano, Marzano. These are people who talk about or recognize authors and writers about instructional practice changes, administrative practice changes that you want to pay attention. Oh, also the author of the other book, Tomlinson, for sure, a curriculum person before she's an administrative person in my mind. So Dufour, Marzano, those people are important to look at. Essentially, Koza points out that it's a child-centered approach, and it is, rather than teachers being sage on the stage saying 2 + 2 is 4, write this down, or the North won the Civil War, write that down. It's about constructivist approaches to drawing it out of the children on their own. It's about active participation / engagement. I don't like this word because there's another word that's used too often, but here it comes, where the teacher is the facilitator of knowledge rather than the sage on the stage. Rather, she is the guide on the side. Those are not original terms. I've heard them in many other places. I don't remember. I don't know where it originated. Sage on the stage versus guide on the side. How does that characterize the schools you are in? Are they sage on the stage classrooms, or are they guide on? I'm sorry. Yeah, so sage on the stage or guide on the side. And we've already talked about. I know I should put that into a presentation. I will before we forget about the commitment. Rather, the research that shows how engagement, constructivist approaches to learning, have a retention rate of the skills and content that are taught at a 90% success rate after 6 weeks, in comparison to lecture and write this down approaches, which is a roughly about 5 to 10% retention rate after 6 weeks. Now, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what should, to be quite honest with you. And so all of those premises come together. It talks about grouping, where you're going to do multi-age groupings. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put a 14-year-old with a 5-year-old. There's lots of reasons why I don't think you want to do that, for any number of reasons. But you can multi-age by doing 2 years, sometimes 3. I'm making a face about 3, where kids can when kids across age levels can work. Think about when you play on this, you play with when you were children and you played with friends. Were they all 9? You were 9, they were 9, or were they all multi-age? Did you learn from some of those older kids? Sometimes not all the best things, but sometimes some very good things to work from. So you have to figure out how to schedule that, because that's a problem too sometimes. And what the state curriculum may be, but you can adjust for that as such. What she puts together up on page 27, figure 1.1, you should look at that carefully. And when you start to do your own planning, really shows you the interaction from student to teacher, back to student, in a circular way rather than a top-down approach as such. It takes a different kind of professional development. And there's this. Now, don't write that in the back of your hand, because that has much to do with what you're going to have to invest into your implementation plan down the line. Now, on page 28, she puts together an action plan, and I like it. Okay, and we'll explain that better. So it's take a hard look at that. I'm going to make a discussion question out of that next week. All right, and that's on page 28. It's a sample vision action plan. That's what part of what your assignment is going to be for this course. It's going to begin with goals, work its way over to actions, so strategies, and then some other premises. I'm going to add a few into that as well. And we'll leave it at that. There's other things that we still need to pay attention to, but you can read as much as well as I can read at you. Rather better that you should read it yourself than for me to read it at you. So I'm going to stop there. I will point out that the very last piece of that chapter is page 36. And she talks about, I should say some of the people she notes are the people whom I spoke about earlier, Dufour, Monsanto. I didn't mention Elmore, but Elmore is good as well. All people who speak clearly. There's a lot of other Fullen. There's Fullen again. Tomlinson, Stone. Stone is an interesting person. I won't make you crazy about, and so forth. In case you're looking to know more about this. But now the next chapter, chapter 2, and you should read this ahead of me. It's called Collaborative Inquiry, and we're going to slow down right there next week, not this week, as such. So what we've done today is page 1 of the YouTube video of this week's video. I'll do page 2 and tomorrow, and post that separately. I made the point about the internship activity substitution. That's a big one for you to remember. I made the point about the discussion question. I made the point about the journal question, and I made some other points along the way. But tomorrow we're going to talk about root causes, okay? And we're going to talk about some investing in capacity and commitment, insofar as what a potential project leader must have. You need both. You need capacity. You need to have the muscles to do what you need to do, and you need to have the commitment. Can't have one without the other. Can you have capacity with that? Yes, you can have capacity with that commitment, but you need capacity to commit. Well, I like the way I said that. Then we'll do some of the Fullen chapters more specifically tomorrow. I'll also put some materials up for you to look at. Okay, so I will put this up tonight with this link, but there'll be another video tomorrow, Tuesday. And with that, I say have a nice night.